All right, the CMS RFI for the health tech ecosystem closed earlier this week, and there have been over 1,300 comments submitted. So this is Josh Mandel. I've been working on some tools for automatically reading and analyzing those comments. And even though there are 1,366, today only 538 have been published in a way that makes them publicly available through regulations.gov to download and analyze. So my analysis right now is essentially a sample of about the first 500, which were available yesterday. So I've been working on an open source tool for doing comment analysis, discovery of themes and topics that are mentioned in these comments, and then summaries along those themes. So the overall pipeline reads in a set of comments through the regulations.gov API or using their bulk CSV format. It downloads all of the relevant attachments that are associated with those comments. And then it reads those comments one by one. And for each comment, it extracts a specific set of metadata according to a template. So it provides, first of all, just a one-line summary explaining who the commenter is and what they're saying in broad terms. Then we have a more detailed profile of the commenter. We describe their core position if they take one. So this could be an individual or an organization, or an individual submitting on behalf of an organization. We extract some key quotations that might be interesting for a reader to see. So streaming physiology is the last mile between regulation and a rescued patient is a thought-provoking quotation. So that's extracted here in this set. And then we look for any key recommendations the comment is making, any specific concerns and insights. And then we go through the comment line by line and we extract it into kind of a summarized bullet point format where we try to preserve the full structure of the argument that they make. And so we have this kind of nested bullet format. And this full structure winds up being the input for several of our more advanced analyses. So we take a pile of these things and we try to use them to determine some of the main themes that are addressed across this whole set of comments. And we can use those themes to then begin producing summaries. So for example, on the theme of artificial intelligence in healthcare, we discovered kind of 4 subtopics, one around administrative decision support, one around patient and care engagement, one around governance, and liability. So there's only about 15 comments that got submitted around this liability theme, but we still identified it as a relevant subtheme. And we'll use this as kind of a starting point to see that the theme analysis includes some executive summary. So we can summarize kind of where there's agreement and disagreement. We look for points where there's consensus. So nearly all commenters explicitly or implicitly call for clarifications of AI liability. And then we look for areas of debate. So what is the extent to which provider should be liable for AI errors? So there's a camp that argues for a limited or protected clinician, and then another one with shared responsibility. And so we call out the key arguments there. And then we try to break down perspectives by stakeholders. So academic research calls for delineating shared responsibility for adverse outcomes. There might be a different perspective from technology vendors where unclear liability is a major obstacle, highlighting the need for safe harbor protections. And then the healthcare professional associations call out the idea that providers should not bear sole or disproportionate liability for AI errors. So you can get different perspectives by these stakeholder groups. And then we read through all the comments and look for any particularly noteworthy insights or emerging patterns. And then we extract some key quotations from all of the specific comments that have to do with this theme. So unclear liability hinders trust and risk evaluation. Current obstacles to provider uptake include privacy concern about AI liability. And so 15 comments were analyzed to put together this theme. And then we have links just to those specific comments. You can get the core position in the one-line overview and then click through these links to get the details on them. So each of the sub-themes has an analysis like this. And then the last thing we do is we have a set of topics that we discovered across these notes or across these comments. So for example, there's a topic that has to do with government programs and regulations. Sorry, let me reload there. I had out-of-date topics. So there's a topic that has to do with data standards and vocabularies. And so the most commonly mentioned one here is FHIR, bulk FHIR, Smart on FHIR, OpenID Connect. We can see there's 3 comments that mentioned OpenID Connect. And then we can pivot to a page that includes all those comments that mentioned OpenID Connect. And this is really useful for people who might want to do some downstream analysis. So there's a button here that says copy for LLM, and I can copy all the detailed comments from everybody who mentioned OpenID Connect, put those on my clipboard, and now I can paste these into an AI prompt. So let's just say I'm going to use Google AI Studio here, paste that whole prompt in, and then underneath I might say, how many, let's say, what are some of the surprising arguments about OpenID Connect in the comments above? And we can run a query like that with the Gemini model. There's about 158,000 tokens in the text that I just pasted in. That was really only across a small number of comments, but the ability to filter down by that topic makes it much more feasible to just do a single prompt analysis against a topic that's interesting. And while this is running in the background, I'll show one more page here, which is in the individual or in the overall comment browser. You can filter by the type of the submitter, by a specific theme, entity, and keyword. So maybe I'm just going to filter down to all the comments that mentioned Loink. And so if I click through any one of these, I should expect to see the word Loink appear somewhere. And indeed I do. That's just a little sanity check. So that can be another helpful way to filter things down. And you could filter by company names, for example, by like how many comments mentioned ASTP from a government organization perspective, and use that again as the source of copying data into an LLM prompt. Let's see how this Gemini instance is doing here. Okay, based on the provided comments, here are some of the most surprising and nuanced arguments made about OpenID Connect. One argument is that it could be a potential substitute for a national patient identifier, which is interesting. At the end of the day, the OpenID Connect standard is going to get you some set of information about the identity of an individual, but you still need some kind of identifier or series of demographics that are going to be exposed there. There's a direct challenge to the centralized model and a push for evolution. So most comments supported OIDC, but one comment directly critiques its common implementation and proposes next-gen implementations where individuals can hold verifiable credentials on their own wallets or devices. So very interesting kind of technology. There's arguments for mandatory implementation with policy levers, and then some implementation challenges. So this overall technique of using AI to index and make the comments easily available, and then also providing an easy way to extract comments and paste them back into AI tools, it's what I think of as this kind of recursive or layered approach of applying these models, and it becomes very powerful for doing these kinds of analyses. So I hope people will find this interesting. I hope there's some insights to be gleaned and maybe even some utility to using a tool like this to understand the breadth of the comments. It's worth saying that there's plenty of problems in an analysis like this. So for example, if you drill into the individual topics, even though we'd like to have a perfectly mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive list of topics, AI shows up across a couple different theme areas. When we drill into the summaries themselves, I'm sure you'll find errors and omissions. So summarizing information across large batches of comments is still a little bit error prone. And even some of today's best models can have a little bit of trouble doing that sort of synthesis. But I think we're at the level here where you can get some pretty good insight. And as always, it's important to drill into the initial commenters, go back and read their original work if you want to make sure you're not missing anything. And each of the comment pages includes a link out to the official comment submission on regulations.gov. So you can go back and read through the raw information and download all of the raw attachments themselves. With that, I think we'll wrap here, and please have fun and let me know if you find this useful.